Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Tommy Joyner Radio Show. I'm here with my boy Shash. Singh, where are you coming at me from today?
Hey, Tommy, what's going on? I'm in Kiev, Ukraine right now. How's it going?
Awesome, dude. Really well. Really excited that you're here. I know this is going to be a super valuable episode for the audience. Plus, you're a really fun guy to talk to, so I think this will be an entertaining one as well. Shash is one of my homies from Medellin, Colombia, also a digital nomad that's been on the road for what? You've been abroad for maybe 3 or 4 years now?
Yeah, I've been abroad for, I think, over 2 years. So I've been basically doing this whole online marketing thing for over 2 years while traveling. But before that, I was also doing kind of like this online marketing thing, but I was based out of Toronto. And then I finally decided to actually move out of Toronto and kind of just start living the digital nomad lifestyle, which has been the best decision I've made so far.
Awesome, man. Well, I know the audience is going to be really excited to hear a little bit more about what you've done as a digital nomad. And they're also going to be really excited to hear about what you've done with your agency and how you've been able to make money for yourself. So maybe you could start out by telling us a little bit about your background and your work expertise and what you're working on right now, and just give the folks a little bit of an idea of what you're up to.
Cool. So I run a YouTube advertising agency that mostly drives traffic to info products. So usually for our clients' campaigns right there, they usually have an info product, course teaching people how to start a business with e-commerce or with this method or this method. And they're usually in kind of like teaching in the teaching space, right? Or they might be doing some sort of high ticket offer where they're actually kind of involved in coaching as well. But really what we're looking for is like scalable offers. And then we run a lot of YouTube ads traffic to it, and we run some Facebook ads traffic to it as well. But we really brand ourselves as a YouTube ads agency because there's not that many people doing that, which allows us to obviously get clients easily as compared to, competing with the millions of Facebook ad agencies out there.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. And I think you have a pretty unique niche. It's a bit ironic that your niche is so unique in terms of focusing on YouTube ads specifically. But maybe you could talk to us a little bit about how you landed on YouTube being kind of your main focus and why you decided to go there versus some of the other advertising channels that are available.
Yeah, so I decided to go with YouTube because of the fact that I basically had experience with YouTube ads. It was kind of like a no-brainer because I was, as a freelancer before I built my agency, I was already doing YouTube ads. And I got into that accidentally when a buddy of mine who runs this fitness business called Body, he asked me to run some YouTube ads for him. I had done 0 YouTube ads. It ended up working out really well. And because of that, I ended up basically continuing up this path of running YouTube advertising campaigns for clients and then turning that into an agency as kind of our front-end service offer.
Okay, cool. So what was that transition from like freelancer to agency like at the beginning?
Yeah, so I basically kind of realized that a lot of work was coming in. I needed to hire people, and I also realized that I need to just focus in on paid ads because I was kind of doing some other random stuff on the side as well. And I decided to cut out the random stuff, decided to start charging monthly fees. I think basically when you're transitioning from a freelancer to agency, there are a few things you need to do. Number one is make sure you're charging agency rates instead of freelancer rates. Freelancers like to charge hourly. If you charge hourly, you're not going to really be able to really do much, right? Like charging hourly is always just like it's like a trap in my opinion. It doesn't basically motivate you to improve efficiency. It doesn't motivate you to hire. It's, in my opinion, the number one thing you do is stop charging hourly, start charging fixed rates or project fees or even monthly retainers, which is where you really want to do is some sort of monthly things because that's dependable and repeatable income. That's one thing. The other thing is sales and marketing. I used your Upwork process, which you taught to Ryan, then Ryan taught to me. Basically it's kind of something that keeps getting passed from like generation to generation. So it's like, you taught it to us, then we taught to like guys like Lewis and other guys. Actually, one of my roommates there, we taught him that, and he just got his first Upwork client today. So your knowledge is helping a lot of people. We're all very grateful for that. And so basically that's started using the Upwork process to get more leads, hired my first part-time employee, and that was kind of how the agency started. And then from there, we started hiring more people. One thing I think I always did right was kind of I think I've been pretty lucky with hiring, and I've also been kind of pretty aggressive with hiring. I think it comes down to laziness on my part because I don't want to do everything, so I just hire people. And because of that, we built like a really solid team, so which has allowed us to scale faster than other agencies where the owner is still doing a lot of the work. So thankfully, I don't really do any of the work in the agency anymore.
Nice. That's awesome. And that's actually a really like cool thing that you said about like hiring because of your laziness. I think one of the reasons I actually became an entrepreneur in the first place is like I had to hire because of my inability to do the skills that I was selling as well. So like I inevitably had to like actually skip a couple steps and build out my team from the very beginning. And it sounds like we have these non-negotiables in terms of like what we're willing and not willing to do. So it sounds like a lot of your unwillingness to do certain things helped you kind of outsource a lot of the work a lot more quickly than most people. Because like in the scheme of things, I mean, you've had your agency a lot for a shorter period of time than a lot of other people I know that have had a bigger struggle getting themselves that removed from the process. How long did it take to go from like Shash delivering all of the freelance work to an agency that handles basically everything? And I know I want to hear a little bit more about like what you actually still do on a day-to-day basis as well if you are completely removed from the process.
Got it. Okay, so a couple of good questions. Question number one, so it kind of came in waves because we actually, I think one of the employees we hired, I ended up training him really, really well, and he was handling pretty much all the client work, and then he left for a bit because he had to deal with some shit, and I ended up coming back into it for a while, and then it kind of, again, I got out of it, but this time it was like there was more solidity, there was more process behind it. And I think over this year, I'd say like, yeah, I haven't really done any client work probably since last October or last November, I believe. But then we've kind of just built up a greater internal knowledge base, and we've been slowly working on kind of, basically the more people there are that you have in your team, right? Like the less you are kind of because if you just have one person and you train them, and even if you have SOPs, that person leaves, that knowledge base is kind of gone, and you kind of have to do it again, or you have to train a new person. When you have 3 or 4 really high level people, one person leaves, the other 3 people still have like that knowledge base, right? So I think that's where we're at right now, where it's like, okay, we got multiple people who know how to do it. And also the last month or so, I took kind of our disparate SOPs and our disparate ways of doing things, and I really turned it into kind of like a much more solid thing where now, like basically most of what we do as YouTube ads is documented. And it's not 100% documented. It's not documented to the level where it's like a completely seamless process, but it is documented to the point where if we bring in somebody new who's relatively competent, we can just give them like a link to a Lucidchart and a Google Doc, and they can basically, in that link, it will, that document itself is like 5 pages long, but then it will link to like other documents that are like another 5-10 pages. And then we also have a bunch of process tree processes which can be assigned. But the big thing is like that document that we have basically allows people to kind of easily find whatever information they need. And then based on that, they can kind of follow that process. Now, what I'm trying to do over the next month is actually take that document and all of that information that I've kind of put into one place where it's easy to find, and actually turn it into something where it's like checklisted. So it's turned into items that they absolutely have to do, because right now it's something that's like, it's like we have it pinned and we tell people, hey, you got to use this, but at the same time, they necessarily may not use it, right? So we're trying to move from it being like, okay, we have everything documented, to we have all the documentation being used consistently every single time. Because this whole SOPs thing, everybody's like, yeah, you got to do SOPs and write it down. But nobody talks about how you actually take SOPs and then turn into something that's usable. That's like a whole different thing where you kind of have to it requires like a higher level of thinking,
Yeah, in terms of turning it into something that someone can actually execute upon. And I think like software like Process Street is really good because it forces you to turn those into a checklist. And a lot of people don't think like that when they're creating SOPs. They just write this big ass document. And a lot of what you're writing ends up being sometimes even unnecessary because it actually doesn't translate into something that is a checklist which someone can follow, which is what I think SOPs should ultimately be. And it helps you really kind of, I guess, pull things out specifically in order to create a system that's a bit more followable. Now, when you're creating your SOPs, I think you have a really good philosophy there, by the way, so that's a really good point. When you're creating your processes at first, how do you look at like the development of those? Because I think a lot of people, when they're starting agencies or productized service businesses, they have a tendency to like, they know that SOPs and processes are like really important. They read a couple books and like they hear about that all the time. And then they just go right into trying to create those. Whereas for those of us who have done those, realize that a lot of it is you have to like develop the process first before you document it. So like, what's your philosophy on that, and how have you gone about like doing it yourself or having other people doing the process before you actually do the documentation? Or do you do a lot of the documentation up front so that you already know what the process is? Like, how's that looked for you?
Yeah, so I mean, at this point, we've been doing this for a while. So I kind of like, with actually building out the process, I would do like pretty, I would obviously draw upon my own experience, but I would also talk to team members and have detailed discussions and be like, hey, what are you guys seeing working? What is working as of this moment? What are you testing? And then based on like my experience, their experience, then I kind of I do brain dumps and write it down. And then I kind of like basically organize it. I'm still trying to figure out the overall, like, all of the SOPs, if we can just like how we can like make it so that like somebody walks into their job and like everything they need to do is just checklisted. That's like a huge challenge because so much of this is knowledge work, right? Like especially because this is like with running YouTube ads, it's not like there's a lot of creative side, there's a lot of complexity. As of this point, I think I've done a good job of capturing like all the various things you can do and the various kind of options and decision trees. But then now I have to figure out how to turn it into like maybe something even more easier to use, where it's not like just like kind of knowledge base, but actually like overall like functioning SOP that people have to use every single day, instead of a knowledge base where it's like they should be drawing upon it. And then the question is like, how much do you want to really build out as SOP, right? Like, because a lot of the people I'm hiring, they're really high level media buyers, and maybe they don't want to necessarily be like following an SOP for everything, as long as they have the structure and the framework and they have the resource to be like, okay, this is how we do things, we do it. But then, should that be done, or should it be like something where you follow the checklist every single time? How detailed should the checklist be? Because maybe the senior media buyers, people who are like doing like the high level stuff, maybe they just need like a 1, 2, 3, 4 of like, okay, do the strategy, make sure the ads are set up right. Or like, you could just do it like every single tiny step, which would be like a million things. So it's like, I'm really struggling with all of that and like figuring it out. And I hear different things, and people have different philosophies. Some people say, hey, you should like document every single thing possible, while other people are like, okay, you should have like a multi-layered things. I think one of my buddies, Taylor, he mentioned this, like, have a multi-layered thing, right? Where it's like, you have the high level, so people can quickly look at that. And then you can kind of go deeper levels if you really are like kind of forgot how to do a specific, action item, because there are hundreds of those specific action items. So it's just kind of like a thing where it's like, there's still a lot of ambiguity. And I don't think there's like really that much specific training on how to deal with that stuff, because everybody talks about, okay, you should do SOPs and you should implement them. But then like, when you actually get into implementing them, it's like it gets a lot deeper, right? And that's like some very high level stuff where, it's not that easy to get training on.
Yeah, that's a really cool breakdown, man. I appreciate that. I think people are going to get a lot out of what you just said there. And the reason I asked you that question is because I believe that SOPs and like systems and processes are very dynamic. Is kind of what it comes down to. And there's a million different ways to do it. But it's not that, that people or the processes are more important than the other necessarily. It's just that sometimes they build on top of themselves in ways that aren't necessarily linear, which I think is something that people fail to realize sometimes. And then I like the idea that your friend had actually about layered SOPs. So maybe as you go through, you can identify, and I think this is one thing that we identified as well when we were building out our last business with Content Pros, is the high level, the a little bit more in depth, and then the super deep dive. Is there some things that lend themselves to needing more information than others in terms of going through that process? And then again, when you're hiring good people, that does solve a lot of this. You can automate through really good people and team members, because at the end of the day, like when you're trying to build a business that's a saleable asset, the thing that's most important is that you have something in place, whether that's automation or a person that's going through and taking care and solving the problems the business needs to solve without the actual owner needing to actually pull levers, right? So I think that's also something really important to keep in mind. And yeah, you touched on a lot of that, which I think is super cool. So thank you for your view on that. It's a bit different than how some other people talk about that. What about, so like in terms of the team that you've built and the systems and processes that you guys got set up in place right now, like what is your bandwidth as an agency? How many clients do you guys have on board right now? Like where do you see yourself going from here with the agency in particular over the course of the next like 6 months to a year?
Yeah, so right now I think we're like maybe forget like 10 to 12, maybe something. I think we have like 15 or 16 accounts, but then for some clients we're managing 2 accounts like Facebook and YouTube. I think it's around the 10, 12 mark. I need to check. I just haven't, like, I just haven't kept, like, I look at like kind of revenue and like, you know, numbers based on like those numbers, but I've actually never tracked like number of clients for some weird reason. So yeah, in terms of where we want to go, right now, like over the last month, I was really focused on this SOP thing, basically just making it really, really smooth and really easy for new media buyers to get onboarded and become really sharp and have something that like people can just refer back to. And I feel like that's done. So at this point, we are probably going to start doing a marketing push again. I've started doing organic content again on my like YouTube channel, start pushing, you know, have a videographer and so on, and start getting to paid ads as well. But yeah, I mean, like, you know, hopefully by the end of the year, we're at like maybe 17, 18 clients. And you know, our clients they're fairly larger clients, right? Like we're not doing like smaller retainers, we're doing pretty high ticket retainers. Some of our clients are, you know, spending hundreds of thousands per month, and we're charging them a percentage of ad spend. So it's not like we necessarily need a lot of clients. What we're really focused on is good fit clients and doing a really good job for them. Because ultimately it's like the clients we've had for a long time. Like I think we have some clients that have been with us for like literally since the agency started, like a year and a half. And that's just because we provide them a good service, they're a good fit, and we make them an ROI. But on the other hand, we also have clients that come in and after 1 or 2 months leave. And a lot of that is just because of the fact that, you know, it's just like, it's not a good fit for our agency, or maybe on surface level. A lot of times on surface level, it seems like a good fit, you know, but then as we go in deeper, it just comes out to be like, they're just obstacles, right? Because running like profitable cold traffic YouTube ads, it's not, you know, like people say it's very easy, but it's not that easy. Like you need to have a converting funnel and a converting offer, right? And that's again why we're really focused on the marketing and positioning, right? Like the thing is, the good clients, the bigger clients are the ones you will get the best results for, because they will convert your traffic you send them. On the other hand, you get the smaller clients, the clients who are like a little hesitant on price, and they're the ones who are going to be freaking out if you're not getting results very fast. And they're also the ones who won't have the marketing savvy to really convert the traffic you send them. So we're trying to think of multiple solutions to that. Like number one is obviously working with better fit clients. And number two is actually, we're like considering starting to help out clients with landing pages and so on. That's again, like something that we may do. The growth path we see is just kind of focusing on basically, obviously getting in more leads, but then qualifying them, getting the quality leads and so on. And then the other thing would also be basically working on our course, which is our info product, which is kind of one thing I really have high hopes for, where, you know, we built a course on how to run YouTube advertising campaigns. And the reason for that is just because obviously Done For You has a lot of overhead, right? Like human resources wise and so on. Like you can make good margin on it and you can do a good job with it. But unless it's very, very productized, which, it it can get done, but unless it's very, very productized, it's just there's an immense amount of effort involved in making sure the whole machine runs smoothly, right? And obviously the goal should be productize it as fast as possible, as much as possible. But it's really like, I think there's certain types of businesses where it's like lends itself more to productization. Like I've broken down how to run good YouTube ad campaigns pretty well, but then there's just like so many things outside of just the ad account where it's like, okay, I have to like basically be like, okay, this is how you troubleshoot a client's funnel. And then this is like how you make sure, because I think one good point you made is like, with your service, with your old business, which you sold, is that you were essentially just providing content. You weren't providing a result. The problem with our agency is we provide a result. I mean, it's not a problem because we do get paid well for it, but because we provide a result, it does make things more complicated. And because of that, we can only work with a small subset of clients. So the course is kind of a solution around that, where number one, we can start serving these people who are maybe not at the level where they can work with us and give them the opportunity to get results as well. And the second part is allow us to have a lot more scale in our business, a lot more like ability to scale faster, just because of the fact that you just have that ability to basically scale an info product far faster than than like an agency that's kind of doing up kind of like a high level service, right? Because things happen, right? Like people leave the business, people come in, and when you have a business that's so heavily reliant on human resources, where humans are such a big part of it, then that just adds in a lot more difficulty to scaling it, because every time you scale like up 2x, you're going to have to redo the whole system. While with an info product, I've seen people scale to 100K a month with just one virtual assistant and maybe like a copywriter, and like literally like a small team of one or two people. Like because I run ads for info products. Like I see inside their businesses, I see like what exactly is needed to run a business like that. And I think it requires a lot more capital. I think it requires a lot more like obviously cash flow management, because you're running ads to get people in and you need to make sure you're doing it in a smart way. And an agency doesn't require that, which makes an agency an excellent starter business model, because you don't need that cash flow. But on the other hand, like the amount of human resources required in an agency, it's like way higher. So I kind of feel like I'm like, okay, if I put in the same effort into an info product, I would get like 3x the results, because it's like, or 4x the results, because it's, and the thing is, keep in mind, I have an expertise, like me and my team have an expertise, right? We're not, if you're just starting out, you can't create an info product because you don't have a skill. Like I know people who try to do that, like try to make a self-development info product when, they haven't done anything. Like, it's like, come on, man, you haven't earned the right to teach people because you haven't gotten any results. So, that's where you start in the service niche. But again, I've just seen like the inside so many info product businesses, and I've seen like the number of human resources required, number of humans required, and the scalability of that. And I think that adding that component to my business at this point, it's a smart move, just because of the fact that I can see that basically being very, very scalable.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up in the way that you did as well, man. That was kind of a good transition into talking about the info product that you guys are considering building out, because I know you've been considering that and working on it for a while now. But one other really good point that you made that I think the audience should take away from is like these types of businesses, like every service-based business, like there's portions of the business that you're going to be able to build up to a certain point. So it sounds like for you, like 10 to 15 clients, whatever the revenue number is, that might be kind of like as high as you ever go, like with that portion of your business. And then you're building out another thing on top of that, that is the info product, that becomes another extension of what you're doing. So when you scale, you don't have to necessarily think, I think a lot of people, when they think about scaling, like for us, for example, I mean, we scaled to 50 customers, and there would have been a lot more things that we had to do to scale to 100 customers, for example. Like the way that we had our business set up to the point where we sold it, we were in a pretty good position where if we brought on 50 customers the next day, we would have been able to service them with the same team. But it took a long time to get to that. And we couldn't scale infinitely with the same number of people and the same systems that we had in our last business. The way that we have had stuff set up, we would have had to change things. Whereas if we built out a component that was this like done with you type info products that people could learn from and then implement a lot of this stuff themselves, that would be like a whole nother component that's obviously a lot more scalable. But also a really good point that you made in terms of, you know, when is the right time to actually start that. And with any business model, there's obviously challenges, but there's definitely things to be taken from what you can do with info products and implement it into what you do with your agency or your productized service business. And then again, maybe you don't want to scale your service business the exact way that it is infinitely. You should start thinking about doing other things and creating a business that's a bit more anti-fragile in the sense that it has like, okay, it has a service component that's a quick cash generator, and then it has this info product side or whatever it ends up being that's a bit more scalable where you can then dedicate money to. And it's a little bit of a longer process to build out, right? You know, the people we know that have done really good at that, like haven't done it overnight. And they've spent a lot of time and money figuring that out. So that's good though, man. Really good points. I appreciate you bringing that up. With regard to your info product, how close are you to launching that? Are you guys finished building that out yet?
Yeah, so we actually have been selling it. We already have content up, so we already have like 60 to 70% of the course built out and available to the people who bought it, which is like module 1, and we're releasing module 2 pretty much right now. It's being uploaded. But basically, it's like going to be a 3-module course, and so it's kind of already ready. But I'm just selling it at a lower price right now, just to get feedback from beta users. Saying it's going to be at like a much higher price. Also, actually, I just wanted to bring up another point on the whole info product agency thing as well. I actually see the info product helping the agency, because if you have authority, right? If you're like known as like an expert for something and you have a course for it, a lot of people are gonna want to work for you. The agency, the course, of the limited number of buyers we've already had, one of them we converted into a client. So it's not necessarily a one or the other. I actually think like the info product is the way to go to build authority for our agency. And also I have a lot more fun when I think about that and I want to plan that out, because the agency is kind of, like I have an existing team handling it. I still do some things like the sales and marketing. Well, not the sales, but the marketing side. I help out a lot with that because I do the content, but I'm not necessarily like day-to-day involved in it. And like I just work on the high level design of it. And it's just like, when I think about actually doing the info product side, it brings me a lot more excitement, because it's just like the agency side, even though it makes good profits and it's like, it's gonna keep growing. The ride to get here has been extremely kind of stressful. So, I mean, it is part of the deal, right? Like you kind of, with what we did, which is basically we kind of 20 extra revenues from our first, like, when we were starting out to now, we basically were, just, it was a very crazy ride. Like there's a lot of stress involved. And when I think about like that and the amount of hiring and the amount of firing that takes place, that's really stressful, because you hire somebody and then, they don't work out and you wasted like 20 grand or something, or 15 grand. Like that happens sometimes with the agency model, and that's really frustrating. People leave, people come. I like a model that's a little bit less HR dependent, because with the agency, it's like literally like you can't grow unless you have more humans, unless you have an automated service, which pretty much turns into a SaaS. So if you really want to just automate it fully to the extent, then eventually you'll have a SaaS, which is what a lot of agencies have done as well. So it just seems to be kind of like that. I don't know. Sam once had a really good video about it in his. I don't remember where I saw this, but basically he was talking about the pros and cons of each model, and I think like. If you can figure out a perfectly productized service, you could take an agency to the moon. But if you haven't perfectly productized it and you don't think that's something you want to do, I think it's a great launch pad to get to, I don't know, like 50K a month, 60K a month, something like that. And then you take those profits that you're making each month, and then you can like kind of play around with different things. Or if you want to scale it, you can scale it, because we have friends, like who are doing like millions a month with the agency business model. So it's kind of like, it depends on what you want to do, right? Like what do you like doing,
Yeah. Yeah, and some people really do thrive continuing to build and scale the agency model even a bit more full service. There's obviously a lot more moving parts, but people have done that successfully. So I think that's discounted. But yeah, like you said, man, there's a lot of options. Dude, this has been fantastic. I honestly think maybe we should wrap up there. Like you've really dropped a lot of knowledge and a lot of like actionable things for people to take away from this. Do you have any more advice or maybe like some parting words for someone that is like starting out trying to build a service-based business in terms of the direction that they should take things? Anything that you think, aside from what you've already said, like some key stuff or like some key resources that they could go to help themselves out on their journey to kind of get to where you are, because you're at a really interesting point as well, and I'm super excited to see where you go next.
Yeah, my biggest piece of advice is I think, Tommy, you have like an Upwork course or something. They should do that for sure. Like,
Cool.
I mean, like,
That in the show.
like that's like everybody starts out of that. Like, you get to 20 grand a month just doing Upwork, right? So just learn that inside out. Like, you don't even need to do anything else unless, like, pretty much, I think with the Upwork process that you laid out, you can get to 10K a month guaranteed. I actually got a client that was worth a huge amount from Upwork. And pretty much all of my friends are getting clients from it. My buddy Lewis also, I think he's nearly at 20 or I don't know, something like that, but maybe we can blur out that part. But my friend, my anonymous friend, I don't know, he's making a lot of money from Upwork. So yeah, so
okay, cool.
do that.
Yeah, that's a really good point as well. I mean, it comes down to I mean, like when you learn the basics of building out your own freelancing agency, and then agency and things evolve from there when you start working on Upwork. So you do learn a lot. So I think that's actually a really good point. So I'll include that in the show notes. Cool, man. Well, what's the rest of your year look like in terms of where you're going to be out geographically, man? Talk a little bit more about your nomadness here as we let people go.
I'll be in Kiev for another month, probably head up to Minsk, Belarus to keep improving my Russian, and then slowly head down to Brazil, maybe hit Colombia somewhere to just say hi to the homies. But yeah, probably gonna be Brazil all winter, Florianopolis. I'm gonna learn how to surf. I'm very excited about that, so yeah.
Nice, man. Yeah, I know you've told me about Florianopolis more than once, man, so hopefully I can swing down there, man, but it'll be back to Barcelona for me. So if you find yourself passing through Spain again, let me know, and then I'll hit you up when I come back to LATAM, dude. But where can the people find you, man? If anybody wants to get in touch, like where should they find Big Shash Daddy?
Yeah, so on Facebook, you can look up my name. It's SHASHSINGH, and my agency's website is linksdigitalagency.com, and yeah, we can put that in the show notes as well.
Cool, dude. All right, man. Awesome. Thank you so much, Shash. I really appreciate you, bro. This was really fantastic. It's always good to connect with you, man. For all the listeners, I hope you guys really enjoyed this episode. I'll have some pretty good show notes on this one because there's really actionable points, probably the most actionable episode that we've had so far. So kudos to you, Shash. And yeah, I know this is going to be really helpful to you guys. So definitely take notes and implement. Get out there.
See you guys.